piece of music you just heard was the ubiquitous Christmas tune Jingle Bells, rearranged using the concept of metric modulation, a technique where we shift to a new tempo based on some sort of rhythmic relationship to an old tempo. What do I mean by this? Consider this rather simple groove of 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now split each quarter note into 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this is where the magic of metric modulation comes in. We replace that and of each beat with the very next number of the beat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and becomes 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Cool, isn't it? This is a simple form of metric modulation called double time. So called because the resultant tempo is exactly twice as fast as the original tempo that we started from.
Double time swing.
But of course, we don't have to modulate using 8 notes alone. We can use any rhythmic value that comes to our mind, ranging from dotted eighths, triplets, septuplets, quintuplets, you name it. The musical effect of this is that the music can get faster or slower. It's just that the rate at which we get faster or slower has been very precisely calculated out. So that's cool and all, but how do we actually calculate the new tempo? Not as hard as you think. To calculate the new tempo, we use a simple ratio. Old rhythmic value by new rhythmic value equals old tempo by new tempo. To make sense of this, we must obviously understand what we mean by old rhythmic value and new rhythmic value. So let's recall our first example of metric modulation, which was double time.
Double time swing.
In double time, the 8th note of the old tempo equals the quarter note of the new tempo. In other words, we have the old rhythmic value, which is the 8th note, and the new rhythmic value, which is the quarter note. Now we need an old tempo, or a tempo which we were situated in before the metric modulation takes place. Let's consider it as 60 beats per minute. Now it's just a matter of cross multiplying to find the value of the new tempo. In this case, if we take the new tempo as x, 1/4 of x equals half of 60. In other words, x equals 4 times 30, which is 120. Exactly twice as fast as the original 60 beats per minute. Cool, right? Now this was just a very simple demonstration of metric modulation, but obviously we can make it spicier. The thing which we have to understand here is that although we use specific rhythmic values for specific metric modulations, we do not have to take just one of those rhythmic values alone. Let me explain. The earlier metric modulation of double time required us to take the 8th note as the old rhythmic value. However, we do not have to take just one 8th note. We could take 3 of them, making the final rhythmic value a dotted quarter. Or we could take 4 of them, making it a minim. We have this dearth of combinations to choose from, each of them having their own rhythmic characteristics and thus varying final tempos and speeds. Keeping this in mind, we can calculate precisely the tempo we need to speed up or slow down a piece using metric modulation. So the feeling imparted by metric modulation can sometimes be subjective. For some, the piece at the beginning of this video may have felt exciting or driven, and for others it may have felt like a random assortment of tempos. Tempos. To make it easier for the listener to actually feel the shift in tempo in a visceral manner, we can make the overarching melody or rhythmic structure simple or familiar. Like it or not, Jingle Bells is a very popular and more aptly familiar melody, taught to most in their early childhood. By following this approach, I knew that no matter how crazy the rhythms got in certain sections of the piece, the melody in its essence would still be recognizable. and certainly not sound like something from Conan and Crow. The first instance of the melody is in septuplets, which is when you divide a beat into 7 subdivisions. The notes are arranged in a ratio of 4/3. In other words, the first note takes up 4 subdivisions, and the second note takes up the remaining 3. The result is this pointillistic rhythm called a septuplet shuffle or a septuplet swing. Now it's time for the metric modulation. We want this piece to get faster, so our only option is to remove one or more of the existing subdivisions, thus reducing the length of the bar and increasing the speed. So let's just remove one of the 7 subdivisions. If we remove one subdivision, 6 of the 7 septuplets becomes a new quarter note, giving us a new faster tempo of 94.5 BPM. We have now entered the realm of sextuplets, a rhythmic value which is equal to 1/6 of a quarter note. The sextuplets, however, last only for a few bars, acting as a transition from the earlier septuplet groove to the newer quintuplet groove. A quintuplet is another rhythmic value, which is equal to 1/5 of a quarter note. So now we have entered the familiar world of 16th notes after all of these weird, unusual pointillistic rhythms. We got here by simply dropping the last of the 5 quintuplets. In other words, every 4 of the 5 quintuplets now equals our new quarter note, yielding us a faster tempo of 118.15 BPM. So we move on to a final tempo change to 157.52 BPM by simply dropping the last of the 16th notes. In other words, every third 16th note becomes our new quarter note, giving us what are essentially triplets. The triplets evoke this quintessential triplet swing, thus concluding the piece on home ground. So that was Jingle Bells using metric modulation, and though I am very excited about the way the piece has turned out, I have to say that metric modulation is merely a compositional technique, and just like any other technique, when used too much it ruins the piece. So use this spicy technique sparingly. Have an amazing Christmas week, an awesome New Year, and see you later.